Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where it is that you are watching from. Welcome to Facing Reality. It's me, January, and today we are continuing the trial of Mark Redwine. You're following along with me to the justice to get, on the road to get justice for Dylan. Dylan Redwine was 13 years old when he went for a court-ordered visitation to go see his father up in Vallecito Lake area of Bayfield, Colorado. Dylan was never seen again, and his mom suspected Mark of foul play from day one. We're going to start this morning with a news clip from when Elaine Hall and Mark Redwine, Dylan's parents, both went on the Dr. Phil show. So here we go.
Investigators search for clues. Both of Dylan's parents are searching for answers from each other. They appeared on national TV today, pointing fingers and unveiling the latest on the investigation. Here's News 13's Selena Westervelt.
I really have a concern that you hurt him and his bones are out there just laying and you don't even care.
An emotional plea from Elaine Redwine, Dylan's mother, today on Dr. Phil. 14-year-old Dylan Redwine went missing 3 months ago. He was last seen during a court-ordered visit with his father in Vallecito.
I didn't notice his backpack not being there. There was a fishing pole at the house, and it was Dylan's fishing pole. That fishing pole is never found.
Taping of the episode several weeks ago was the first time Redwine's parents had spoken with each other besides text messaging in 3 years.
Did you hurt him?
No, Elaine, I wouldn't hurt him. What kind of mother are you to even think that I was capable of doing something like that?
The teen's mom believes his father had something to do with his disappearance and probably killed him.
When you're mad at somebody, your main focus is to get even or get back with them and hurt them. That's how your mind works.
Really?
Yes, really.
So because you said it makes it true.
Police have not named any suspects in the case. Dylan's dad thinks he was abducted while walking to a friend's house 6 miles away. And today, he claimed he wasn't the last one to see Dylan, telling Dr. Phil his mail carrier spotted his son before he vanished.
On the day Dylan went missing, I saw 2 boys walking down the road, not too far from where Dylan lives. It was around 1:30 in the afternoon.
Based on the arguing and finger-pointing, it appears Dylan had a rough family life. His dad says he divorced his mom because she had a drinking problem.
The bottom line is we're all suspects, regardless of what the law enforcement says. And whether we've taken polygraph tests or not, it doesn't matter what the results are.
Will you take a polygraph?
Selena Westervelt, KRQE, News 13.
The case is split up into 2 episodes. The next one airs tomorrow at 3 on KRQE. The reward for information leading to Dylan's whereabouts is now at more than $50,000.
Keep it quilted means you keep it the best.
All right, Mom suspected him from day one. She went on the Dr. Phil show. She was very vocal. This is awkward. I let my son go 6 hours away, and this man is calling me, asking me if I've seen him. WTH, right? That's what I feel like she was saying. So today we're going to continue the trial. Today we have Dylan's brother, Cory Redwine, on the stand. Now, if you remember, if you have never heard of the story, I suggest you go back, take a look at the playlist labeled Dylan Redwine. You'll be able to see everything that we've been talking about there. Cory was with Dylan when they found the unflattering, to say the least, pictures of Mark. These are photos that I think I showed a few glimpses of them back maybe day 1, maybe day 2. He is dressed in women's lingerie, a few different layers. He's wearing an adult diaper. It is filled with feces. He is enjoying that very much. And then he commences to take that diaper off and eat said feces. So these were photos that Mark had on his computer. Still don't know why. Not sure if that was just a kink he had or, what the purpose was. I think it could maybe been like a blackmail or something he was required to do because potentially maybe he owed money to somebody. I don't know if we'll ever know. But the point being is that Dylan and his brother Cory, they saw those pictures. Cory actually took photos of them and had them on his phone later on in evidence. And it said that could very well be the reason why Dylan is no longer here today, that he brought those pictures up. I love to watch these trials, and I love to watch them with you. So here we go.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please start by introducing yourself to the jury by your full name?
Cory Allen Redwine.
And could you spell your last name for the record, please?
Redwine.
Mr. Redwine, where are you originally from?
Originally, I was born in Denver, lived in North Carolina for a few years, and then moved back to Colorado, and have been, lived in Durango for 10 years, and then since 2012 have lived up in the Colorado Springs area.
So did you grow up in Colorado?
Yes.
And then when did you move to Durango, roughly?
In 2004.
Okay. And I want to talk a little bit just about your family. So what is your mother's name?
Elaine Hatfield.
Okay. And what is your father's name?
Mark Allen Redwine.
And does your mother go by Elaine Hall sometimes?
Yes.
Okay. And do you see your father here in court?
Yes, I do.
Mark Redwine?
Yes.
Where is he sitting, and what's something that he's wearing?
He's sitting to the left of me, wearing a gray suit and glasses.
Your Honor, I'd ask that the record reflect that the witness is indicating the defendant.
It will.
And did you have any siblings, Mr. Redwine?
Yes.
How many?
I have a full brother, Dylan Redwine, and then two half brothers.
And how about your parents? Was there at some point in time a divorce?
Yes.
So when did they first split up?
They split up in 2005, roughly for just a separation. And they kind of just had a separation relationship, just keeping me and the kids up until 2012.
Was there a point in time after that separation that they split up in terms of where they were living?
Yes.
And then where did they each live after the separation?
My mom lived on 61 Windmill Drive in Durango, and then my dad lived up on County Road 501. I can't remember the address name though.
And does that County Road 501, does that lead all the way up to 2343 County Road 500?
Yes.
And then Windmill, is that in Bayfield but has the address of Durango?
Yeah, it's in between Durango and Bayfield.
Is that up by Lake Bayacito?
No.
I'm sorry. Is the place on County Road 500 up by Bayacito?
Yes.
And then the place on Windmill is closer to the town of Bayfield?
Yes.
You talked about you had a brother named Dylan. Back in November of 2012, how old was Dylan?
He was 13 years old.
Do you recall Dylan's birthday?
Yes.
What is it?
February 6th, 1999.
And how old were you back in November of 2012?
21. Just recently turned 21.
And when is your birthday?
November 14th, 1991.
So by November 18th of 2012, you were 21 years old?
Yes.
Is that a 7-year age difference?
Yes.
When the separation happened, did you live with your brother?
Yes.
And where did you primarily live?
With my mother.
Is that at the Windmill address?
Yes.
Did you also live with your father?
In stints, but not, periodically, but never full time.
Visits, would that be a good way to characterize it?
Yes.
How was your relationship with your brother?
It was great. Obviously, there's a 7-year age difference. You know, we were kind of in different parts of our lives, but as far as living under the same household, and having, you know, to go, you know, living together, we had a very strong and tight-knit relationship.
You guys hang out together?
Yes.
Do you talk about personal things, important things together?
Yes.
Is it fair to say you weren't just brothers, but you were close friends as well?
Yes.
With that age difference, did you ever take on sort of a father role with Dylan?
Yes.
And what did that look like?
Dylan needed someone to take him to practice, to play catch with him, to take him shopping, to talk about girls with him. And these are all things that being a primary figure in his life, you know, driving him to school and taking him, you know, to practice, that I was able to provide for him. So.
How would you describe your brother Dylan, Mr. Redwine?
Joyful, positive, you know, goofball. There's, you know, he had a laugh that was, you know, still to this day, you know, it's one of my fondest things about him. So, you know, he was a person you just wanted to be around.
Did he like to play sports?
Yes.
Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Well, he was a very gifted athlete. He was, you know, very quick, and it was something I had an interest in as well. So naturally, it was just a common ground for us. So, you know, he liked to train and, you know, to be outside and be physical, and you know, he knew that he was gifted physically, and he liked to show that ability off.
What sports do you like to play?
Baseball, football were his main sports. He, you know, other than that, he just really liked being outside.
Did he like watching sports as well?
Yes. He wasn't, you know, as big, you know, on watching sports as he was about playing them, but he, you know, he kept up with his favorite teams and, you know, watched them play, you know, throughout the season, depending on what time of the year it was.
I'm going to ask you about a few other things about Dylan, just slightly more specific. But did Dylan like fishing?
He liked to be outside. Fishing wasn't necessarily something he strongly loved. He was quite at the age to where it was, you know, super fun for him, you know, having to tie his own line and all that stuff, just the stuff that goes along with it. So, I mean, he did it, but it wasn't something that, you know, he would go, you know, do by himself, or, you know, do just, you know, without, as a hobby kind of thing.
Did he have a fishing pole?
Yeah.
And you knew?
You know,
Now, the reason they're asking about fishing is because Mark makes a point, once he reports Dylan missing, Mark makes a point to say that the fishing pole, Dylan's fishing pole, is missing. And mind you, Dylan hasn't wanted crap to do with his dad in months. He has not replied to his emails. He's not replied to his text messages. He's not used the money that Mark has put in his account. He doesn't want to go to his dad's. He doesn't want to be around there. He doesn't want to be there. And Mark did what he did, and then he tried to throw the scent off, so to speak, and told law enforcement that his fishing pole was missing. And so that's kind of where we're getting this line of questioning here today. You know, did he like fishing? Was this something, because they're trying to prove that, you know, Dylan didn't leave that house. He never walked away. He did not leave that house until his bones and body was carried away by Mark.
What it looked like?
yes,
Had you been fishing with him?
yes.
But he wasn't someone, as you're saying, that would go out on his own and fish by himself.
Yeah.
Did he know how to tie a lure?
No, he tried really hard. It was one of the things that, you know, was a struggle for him and for me when we went fishing. So, he didn't know how to do it, but, he certainly tried to do it.
In particular, when he was 13 years old, was that an interest of his that he would go off and do on his own, or was that not really one of those interests at that time?
No, that was...
answer, pardon me, objection. We've covered this.
It was asked, and he's already answered.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let's talk about...
It was asked, and he already answered it. Excuse me, Aaron. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let's talk about phone usage, Mr. Redwine. You lived with him for a long time?
Yes.
And did you live with him up to close to the age where he was 13?
Yes.
Okay. Was he someone who used his phone a lot?
Yes.
Did you see him on it all the time, kind of thing?
Yes.
Did he have a cell phone?
Yes.
Did he have an iPod?
Yes.
Did he have Facebook?
Yes.
Talk about his habits with that.
He's, kind of, he was new to it, so he, technology was something he was very interested in. And, his friends, in the world we live in today, it's super easy to just keep in contact with your friends via text message, no matter where they're at. So he was always into, keeping close relationships and talking with his friends regardless of where he was at.
Was he someone that kept his phone on a ringer or a vibrate setting?
It kind of depended. I can't really recall any certain circumstances, but I'd imagine, he kind of knew when to keep it silent and when he could have it ring.
Is it fair to say he was a typical 13-year-old, communicating with his friends all the time on his phone, things like that?
Yes.
Is that at morning, nighttime?
Throughout the whole day.
Mr. Moran?
Your Honor, we'll just lodge an objection to the ongoing leading question.
You're overruled.
Overruled? Is that what you said, Your Honor?
I overruled, but try not to lead.
Thank you, Your Honor. So let me talk specifically about his phone and the use of it by a CTO. So actually, let me back up, Mr. Redwine. So I talked to you a little bit about when you guys lived together. Is there a point in time when your family moved out of the windmill area?
Yes. I want to say in June 2012, my brother and my mother moved up to Colorado Springs to be with my mom's husband, Michael Hall. And I stayed behind just a few months. I moved up in August of 2012 just because I had a job. And I stayed down there just to finish out some work. So I moved up in August shortly after they did.
So were those the two primary homes, basically, as Dylan grew up?
Yes.
And then can you talk just a little bit about the time division between him with his father and him with his mother?
For the most, my mom had she was the main caretaker. The entire year we were in her custody, with my father coming in certain times of the year, and that would be the times that we would visit him. So sometimes it would be for a week at a time. Sometimes it would be for a weekend or a night, but it just kind of depended on his work schedule.
Do you recall the year that your parents separated and split houses?
Yes.
What year was that?
2005.
Okay. And then do you recall which year they were formally divorced?
I believe it was 2009 or 2010. I can't remember specifically. It's been 12, but somewhere in that time frame.
From the 2005 to 2009 period, was it technically a split custody agreement?
Agreement, yes. But we, like I said, we were still living with my mother. He had never really exercised his visitation rights. So as it was split custody, we still maintained all of our time with our mother.
And what years did you live with your mother until?
I lived with my mother until 2012. That's when I moved out, got my own place. and I've lived with her my entire life up until that point. So.
Okay. And then when the divorce happened, after that, was there a point in time where there was where the windmill house was at issue?
And Mr. Johnson, you really have to stay next to the microphone, please. You can put the microphone on the other side of the lectern if you want.
I'll try to stand here, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Redwine, did your mother ultimately move out of the windmill house?
Yes.
Why did she move out of the windmill house?
Because when the divorce was finalized, Mark Redwine received possession over the house.
And then where did she move to after that?
She moved in with her current husband, Michael Hall.
And that's when Dylan moved out of Bayfield?
Yes.
Was that around July of 2012?
Yes.
And did you move out of Bayfield at that time as well?
I moved a few months later in August.
Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about that house in Bayfield. I'm going to approach Your Honor with People's Exhibits 22, 23, and 24.
All right.
They've been previously provided to the defense.
Okay.
Okay, real quick. So that was July of 2012 was when they had to move out of the home. We learned yesterday that September of 2012, or maybe it was the day before, September of 2012 was when the custody hearing was held. That was when Dylan went in front of the judge and told the judge, they went in closed quarters, just the judge and Dylan. Elaine wasn't there. Mark wasn't there. No one was with him. And he stated, I want to live with my mom. And the judge said, well, you're 13 years old and you do not get to decide that. So November of 2012 for the Thanksgiving holiday is when Dylan went and visited Mark. So kind of listen to that timeline. Like that's huge. July and then September and then November. That all happened within a span of just a few months. And, sometimes in life, those days, weeks, months, they happen really, really quick. So there was a lot of big changes that happened for this family. Elaine, they had been split and separated since 2005. So, there had been a long time that she had been separated from Mark. So for her to have a new relationship, that was okay. And that probably took a little bit of time, I would assume. But all of that happened, bam, 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 July, September, November. Whew. Yeah, bless his heart.
Do you recognize the maps in People's 22 and People's 23?
Yes, I do.
Do you recognize the photographs?
Yes, I do.
People's 22 and 23, fair and accurate photographs of the map of the area up in Bayfield, close to your father's house?
Yes, they are.
And then is the picture 24 a fair and accurate picture of the defendant's home?
Yes.
And that's 2343 County Road 500 in Bayfield?
Yes.
This time I'd move to admit People's 22, 23, and 24, Your Honor.
Any objection?
I beg your pardon, Mr. Johnson, if I've misplaced those, but I don't see that in my pile of pictures.
Nor in mine.
Apologize. May I approach you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Exhibit number 22 and 23, those were maps that depicted where the friends lived and where the Redwine home was. Number 24 is the outside picture of Mark Redwine's home, and we saw those in a previous day, I think day 1 or 2. These are linked down in the bottom of the description. There is a link to all of the exhibits there in the Colorado Judicial Branch.
We'll stipulate to their admission. Thank you.
Okay. 22, 23, and 24 are admitted.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
So up on the screen behind you, sir, I'm going to put up what is in front of you as People's Exhibit 22. That's the same map that's in front of you, sir?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to approach with a pointer. Can you just have a picture with that? Where your father's residence is on that map?
Okay, Mr. Redwine, if you stand there, people behind you can't see, so if you need to get off to the side, thank you.
And then can you indicate, just for perspective, where the town of Durango would be? Okay. People's Exhibit 23. Is this a closer up view of that same area? Okay. And can you show the jury where the north side of the lake would be?
Okay, you got to speak up. And you can hold the microphone there in your left hand if you want, and tap on the top, will you? Nothing? Okay, we're good. All right.
Permission to move about the well.
Yeah,
I did it without a...
Go ahead.
Can you show the jury, Mr. Redwine, just to orient them? Thank you. And so what would be the route that you take up to your father's house if you were coming up here?
County Road, I believe this is 500. And then this is where it splits off. That is County Road 501. And you follow this road. This is a dead-end campground. And just before then, there's a field right here. And Mark Redwine's house is.
Okay. Is this generally a busy area or a secluded area around November?
In November, it's secluded.
Okay. So what is the traffic like up there?
In November, there's very little traffic, just locals that live up there. That's it. In the summertime, it is very busy. A lot of people come through for visitation. It's a beautiful place over there. Attracts a lot of tourism.
Are some of those homes seasonal?
Yes.
And then it looks like a dead end at the top, am I right?
Yes.
What's at the top, if anything?
At the very top is a campground. I believe it's the Blue Spruce Campground, but that is all the way at the top with a few residential homes being in between the campground and Mark's house.
Is that a seasonal type of campground?
Yes.
Is it closed in November?
Yes.
And just generally speaking, are there a lot of houses up there or very few houses up there?
There's quite a few houses. Just across the street from Mark's house, there's kind of a little subdivision. And then going up on the road, there's close to 6 to 7 houses just off the road. So there are quite a few houses up there.
And then are those houses occupied more so in the summer?
More so in the summer. Not very many people stay in those houses in the winter.
Now on the other side, to the right on the picture, which would be at the east, what is that road that goes up onto the mountain?
This is Middle Mountain Road.
And what is that, a residential road or is that more of a recreational road?
That is a recreational road.
And as you go up that road, is there a point on that road somewhere where there's a gate that closes for the winter?
Yes.
Is there, if I could approach that?
Yes.
Is there a little, are there any houses at the bottom part of that?
There's just a little house and just some like a little parking lot right as you go up, and then just on the back side over where these are, there's some houses that kind of come up on this road that you can see from this road, but there are no houses on the road.
And then where approximately is the gate on the road?
Approximately, I want to say somewhere in this area. It's hard to see being zoomed out that far though.
And then is that also a dead end road up there?
Yes.
So is this the northmost end of Vallecito that we're looking at right now?
Yes.
And so your father's, the defendant's home is on the northmost part of County Road 500, and then Middle Mountain Road would be the northmost road on the right there?
Yes.
Okay. What is that road like, the terrain on it?
It's dry, it's bumpy, and there's a ton of wildlife all year round on it.
Have you been up that road before?
Yes.
Is it difficult and impassable at times in the winter?
Yes.
Is it a walking distance from the defendant's home?
No.
So what are we looking at in terms of mileage? Do you ever walk from the defendant's home up to Middle Mountain Road?
I've walked from Mark's house to where these two roads meet, County Road 500 and County Road 501.
Okay. Is that in and of itself a significant walk?
Yes.
Okay. How long would it take for you to walk from the defendant's home all the way up to the gate on Middle Mountain Road?
By foot, going the highlighted route, it would take between, I'd just guess, say between 6 and 7 hours. But that's with the speed walk, and you know where you're going.
Have you ever done it?
No.
Has Dylan ever done it?
No.
Have you been at the defendant's residence with Dylan before?
Yes.
And have you ever heard of him doing it?
No.
Now, in terms of the terrain between Middle Mountain Road and the defendant's residence, what is that terrain?
There's a river that runs right through. You can see it through this canyon, and it's just on the other side of Mark's house. But to get from here to there, you'd have to find the bridge. There is a lot of housing in this area, so there's a lot of roads where you could possibly find that. But even coming through and walking through all these housed and residential roads leading up to the base of Middle Mountain Road is still a hike in its own, and I can't say for sure that he would be, nor would I be too familiar in that area.
Have you ever known him to go hiking up that mountainside of Middle Mountain Road?
No.
Have you ever done that?
No.
Is it, as you go from the defendant's house north, is that terrain extremely steep?
Yes.
What does it look like in there?
All the terrain around this area, minus the subdivision, is this cliffs all the way up the backside of Mark's house. The cliffs run alongside to this campground. There's a little trail that takes you back there that's pretty treacherous, but then all of across the river and the other side of the street is the same. It's cliffs and very steep terrain.
Is the defendant familiar with Middle Mountain Road from your experience?
Yes.
How's he familiar with it?
I know he's been up there to gather his firewood, to just exploring the area, knowing where he's living, to just going up there to, do what he enjoys to do.
How about recreation and ATVs?
Yes, it's a very frequent ATV road. The whole way up, there's a little gravel pit that entices a lot of motor vehicles up there.
Did the defendant own an ATV?
Yes, he did.
I'm going to go to People's 24. And can you explain to the jury this house?
Yes, This is Mark Redwine's house. It is after he had it remodeled, at least from what it appears to be out the outside. His stove used to be in the corner where he'd have his fireplace, with this being the kitchen, this being the living space, and behind the living space being a bedroom, with that being the upstairs bedroom, and then this being a, which was Dylan's bedroom, but this is the front of Mark's house.
Does that face in the direction of Middle Mountain Road?
Yes.
You mentioned a remodel. Was there a fire at some point at the house?
Yes.
When was that?
I believe it was in 2010, but being as long as it was, I can't fully recollect that.
Was there significant damage from that fire?
Yes.
And did the defendant have to move on and be somewhere else after that fire occurred?
Yes. During or after the fire, he had to stay in a hotel while the renovations for his house were being done.
Do you know where he lived in the meantime? What hotel?
I believe it was the Holiday Inn, leaving Durango, headed to Cortez, and there's a restaurant that's attached to it, but I can't remember if that's exactly it or not.
When the fire occurred, what had to be redone inside the home?
The whole entire kitchen was redone. This living room space was done. There used to be a back bedroom behind the kitchen, and that got turned into stairways that led up into the top, which was Mark's room. And then this whole room got put in, and that was Dylan's room, which had previously been Mark's house, or Mark's room up here, and then this was the secondary living room.
Okay. Were the floors redone after the fire?
Yes.
And was the furniture replaced after the fire?
Yes.
Including in the living room area?
Yes.
When did the defendant move back into the home?
He moved back into the home in 2011, although I can't remember exactly which month it was.
Does April sound right?
Yes.
And you can sit down, sir. Thank you. So by November of 2012, how old were the floors and furniture in the living room of that home?
They were a few months. I can't.
Okay, so let me tell you the significance really quick of this fire and the flooring and the furniture and everything being replaced. Because Dylan's blood was located on the new floor, on the sofa, on the coffee table, and this was a little while later, okay? And it had already been cleaned up. So there's going to be a few things that you see, a few parts of the blood where they're going to say they cannot exclude Cory, okay? Mark, Cory, Dylan are all biological, dad and son. So they all have, the same DNA to an extent. And so by the small amount that they found in some of these areas, they were not able to rule out Cory, whom we see right here right now. However, Cory hadn't really been up there since all of this had happened, since the flooring had been replaced and the furniture and stuff had been replaced. He says, I damn sure didn't bleed up there. So just letting you know kind of what the significance is of this.
Recall specifically because I wasn't there when the home was finished or completed from the firework, but from the time that I had visited up there until November, it had been at least 6-7 months.
And then you said 2011.
Or 2011, yeah, sorry. So from 2011 when he got it redone till 2012.
Okay, so is it fair to say maybe a year and a half or so?
Yes.
Let's talk about that period of time. So after the defendant moved back into the home in Bayfield, did you see him there?
Yes.
Okay. Talk to the jury about how much time you spent there from after the fire till Dylan went missing.
I had spent a good amount of time up there. I had helped Mark finish up some of the outer work on the house, and then there was brief spots in between that I would live up there and kind of help take care of the house while he was on the road, as well as trying to kind of figure out a way to move out and live by myself. So,
was Dylan living up there, or was he living with his mother?
He was living with his mother.
Let me show you a couple of pictures I have marked People's Exhibit 491 and 492. I believe, Counsel, you have copies of these. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Recognize those pictures?
Yes.
Have you seen them before?
Yes.
And are those, where are they, where are you in those pictures?
Those 492 is right at the front door when you walk in, facing the living room. And 491 is me sitting on a leather couch just as you enter the front door in the living room.
So back in April of 2012, is that a time when you would have been living there?
Yes.
And do those pictures capture what that room looked like around that time?
Yes.
Are they fair and accurate of that room?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I would move to admit People's Exhibit 491 and 492 into evidence.
I know this is a strange request, but I'm not certain if this came off of a phone. I'm not familiar with these particular photographs. I'm happy to ask Mr. Johnson if I could briefly, or would your dear...
What difference does it make? For admissibility, it's just are they fair and accurate that it was. So if there anything, any objections you have, you can talk to Mr. Johnson later about it.
Whether they were disclosed.
They are. They're in discovery.
Okay.
They're from an iPad device.
Okay. Thanks. That's sufficient.
Okay. All right. They'll be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I'm going to start with 491. Okay. So, Mr. Redwine, is that you in the picture?
Yes.
And this furniture, is that furniture from after the fire?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Do you have the pointer up there still?
Yes.
Is there a rug underneath the coffee table?
Yes, it is from this corner.
Okay. And is this a period of time in which you were living at the house, or was this just a visit?
Mr. Redwine, turn the microphone towards you. It's directional. It won't pick up unless you're right in it.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Were you living at the house at this time?
Yes, I was staying up there.
Okay. I'm going to move on to 492. Is this also a similar time frame?
Yes.
And is this looking into that same living room would be at the top of the picture, am I right?
Yes, this would be the same table, but the opposite corner from the other picture with the bottom corner of the carpet showing.
And then whose dog is that?
That would be my dog.
What was your dog's name?
Sapphire.
Okay. When you were living at the home, how long roughly were you living and staying at the home?
A span on and off of between 4 and 5 months, I'd say.
Okay. Did you, in that time...
Can you resume a seat?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Redwine, I want to move on.
Hold on a second. Mr. King, Mr. Lister, if you want to talk, you go outside. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Redwine, I'd like to move on and talk to you a little more about Dylan, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
So, with regard to Dylan, you had mentioned there were some visits up to Vallecito, correct?
Yes.
All right. Did he like to visit the defendant in Vallecito?
Not Mark himself, but he did enjoy being up in that area.
Why did he enjoy being in that area sometimes?
It's just a cool place to to visit.
Did he have friends up there?
He had a few, as I recall, but none that I've ever met.
And did he like to visit the defendant himself?
Not particularly, no.
Did he talk to you about that?
Yes.
So back in 2012, was he visiting a lot, or was he visiting infrequently?
He wasn't visiting very often. He usually would just go for 1 or 2 visits throughout the year.
Had their relationship changed over the years?
Yes.
Could you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah. Dylan was growing into, a young man, and was kind of going, just through, being a teenager, puberty and stuff like that, and needed just some people in his life, and the ones, that he had in his life that he wanted to contact, he did contact, and the ones that he didn't really want to be in his life, he kind of excluded them. So.
Over the course of the 4 years or so leading up to 2012, about how many days would you approximate the defendant actually saw Dylan?
Objection. This is going to call for speculation. Approximation is not for this courtroom.
You know what? You can cross-examine him on it. I think it's fine. Go ahead.
You had mentioned that you guys were with your mother all the time.
Yes.
And the defendant wasn't very involved in having time with people.
Yes.
Can you give me that estimate over a course of about the 4 years leading up to 2012? How many actual days the defendant would have spent with Dylan?
If I had to say a number, I'd say anywhere between 40 and 60 visits.
And are we talking about visits or days?
Just visits. I mean, they might last for a week, or they might last for a few brief hours, just coming in to have lunch. It just kind of depended on what their schedule was.
Now, as we moved into 2012, were those visits fewer and fewer?
Yes.
So do you recall what visits Dylan Redwine actually took to his father's house since the fire and everything was redone at the house?
I recall him going there for I want to say it was a Memorial weekend. I can't specifically recall I know it was a holiday weekend, something like that, where it was just him and Mark, and then I know they went on the vacation to Chicago in 2012.
So the baseball trip in August, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I believe so. The one they went to Boston and saw the Red Sox in 2012, and those are the only specific ones I can remember. I know there's, a few just brief ones that were in between there too.
Besides that August baseball trip, and was there a trip in Labor Day?
If I recall correctly, yes. But it's been so long, I can't say for 100%.
Is it fair to say it was only a few visits in 2011 and 2012?
Yes.
And some of those visits, it sounds like you're describing, were on the road?
Yes.
In any of those times that Dylan went to visit the defendant up there, did he ever return with a bleeding injury that you recall?
Not specifically, no.
Did he ever talk to you about being injured up there?
No.
I have a couple more questions about Dylan up at the house. On those visits, did he ever call you for rides?
Yes.
And why did he call you for rides from visits to the defendant's home?
A large part of it was because he knew I would answer and come and pick him up. I was, I was his best friend, a lot of the time, so it wasn't unusual for him just to call me and want to hang out. And, a lot of the times it was when he was up there, so.
Would he call you because he didn't want to be there anymore?
Yes.
How would he call you?
He usually would call me several times in a row, back to back to back. and he would probably usually leave like a voicemail or something in there, just kind of explaining it, and then just keep calling. But when he was adamant about getting a hold of you, he did everything he could to try and do that.
Had you actually gone up there before and picked him up from visits?
Yes.
What types of devices or phones did he use to contact you?
For the most part, when he was up at Mark's house, it was his house phone. He would call me on his house phone. There might be some times where I would get a text, just, hey, when you get a chance, you want to come pick me up, and I would respond, not kind of knowing I wouldn't get a response back, but just go up there anyway. But usually it was either just a brief text message or a phone call from Mark's house.
How was phone service up there?
It was in 2012, especially when he was up at Mark's
Now that significance of Dylan calling and calling and calling, that goes right in along the lines of the text communications that Dylan had with Ryan Nava. If you remember, you can see his testimony a couple days ago on the playlist, but Ryan, they went through his text messages and he was saying, look, I'm going to be there at like 6:30 in the morning and you better answer the door. I'm going to call you. I'm going to call you. I'm going to call you. I'm going to bang, 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 bang. I'm going to, and we're hearing Dylan's brother, Cory, say that is exactly, Dylan's MO. That is exactly how he was. His personality was, if he wanted something, that was, what he was going to strive to get. And so, for the fact that Dylan just ceased to communicate with anybody is very telling.
Especially, but before then it was very spotty up there. You didn't get service. You only got service really as you were kind of coming in to Vallecito, where the restaurants and stuff are. And then once you kind of left that area, there was no service up there. I mean, you might briefly get a text message out if you held your phone up long enough, but that's about it.
Were there locations within the home that you could go to get a text message out?
Yeah, there was the kitchen window and the living room window. If you held your phone up there long enough and were patient enough, you could usually at least just send out one message.
And how about Wi-Fi?
For a long time in Mark's house, he didn't have Wi-Fi, but I know right before the fire and then always after the fire, he had Wi-Fi in there.
So by November 2012, you could use your computer, Facebook,
yes,
iPod texting, things like that from up there?
Yes.
And you mentioned the landline. Is that just a old-fashioned telephone line that was hooked in?
Yeah, just standard, home phone. It was wireless. And it was just pretty much just an add-on to the Wi-Fi when he got that service signed up.
Okay. I'm going to go back to People's Exhibit 22 for a second. How far was Mark's house from Bayfield?
I can't be specific in miles, but I know it's at least a 40 to 50-minute drive.
So is it too far to walk?
Yes.
Did Dylan have any friends who were close enough that he would actually walk with?
I recall he had a friend that lived kind of in the middle of the lake, but that was still kind of too far for him to walk to his friend's house to go any further from there.
Is that still several miles?
Yes.
Had you ever known him to leave the house and walk somewhere like that to a friend's house on his own?
No. Occasionally, he would just go ride his bike or something like that, but never any adventurous walks like that.
Okay. Did Dylan typically keep a cell phone with him?
Yes.
Typically keep an iPod with him?
Yes.
Did Dylan carry a wallet?
I think he had one, but I don't recall it being an everyday thing for him. I think he just had, some birthday money that he kept in there, and when he needed it, he would use it.
Where did he keep his wallet when he kept it?
Usually in either the side pocket of his shorts or the back pocket of his jeans, or if he was, like riding his bike or in a car or something like that, he would have it in a backpack if he had one.
Did he have an ATM card that you knew of?
He did have a card for Mark, yes.
Where did he keep that?
In his wallet.
As well. Did Dylan ever talk to you about running away or hurting himself or anything like that?
No.
Did he seem happy living with his mother?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask the court to read the limiting instruction to the jury.
All right. In regard to the photograph?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence you are about to hear about and about to see is being admitted for a limited purpose. The photograph, it's just one photograph?
Four, Your Honor.
The photographs are not being admitted to prove the defendant had a bad moral character, and the jury cannot use this evidence for that purpose. The photographs are being admitted to allow the prosecution to attempt to prove that the defendant became violently enraged when confronted by others concerning his sexual preferences. The photographs are also being admitted to allow the prosecution to attempt to explain the deteriorating relationship between the defendant had with Dylan. They can be used by the jury for these purposes and no others.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, in the event it's necessary, we renew our objection.
It's noted for the record.
So, Mr. Redwine, in 2011, did you and Dylan go together on a trip with the defendant?
Yes.
Where did you go?
We went to Cleveland, Ohio, on a little road trip, and went up to Detroit and just kind of spent Father's Day up in that part of the country, just seeing baseball games and race car races and stuff like that.
Did you spend the entire trip on the road?
Yes.
How did the trip start off? Did it start off well?
Yeah. Me and my brother got a call. Mark had just flown into town. So he called me, asked him to come pick him up. So we went, me and my brother went to his house, or went to the airport and picked Mark up. And then from the airport, we went back up to his house for the night, where we stayed, just to where we could get an early start on the morning.
Okay. And then you drove off to the East Coast?
We drove up through Kansas and Iowa, and we're headed up to the lakes up there, Cleveland, Michigan, those states up there.
Was there a point in time in that trip that Mark went off somewhere?
Yeah, there was a few times where, he would leave, and me and Dylan would just hang out together.
And was there a point in time when Dylan used the defendant's computer?
Yes.
Did he find something on the computer?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what he found?
He found pictures of Mark dressed in women's clothing, wearing a diaper, taking selfies of him wearing the clothing, wearing the diaper, eating the feces that was in the diaper, and just that's pretty much it.
Dylan, back in 2011, was he 12 years old?
I believe so, yeah.
How did he react to seeing those photographs of his father?
He was pretty disgusted. It was something that he kind of had to try to contain himself. When we found the pictures, we were in the hotel room with Mark at the time, and Mark was sleeping, and Dylan was on his laptop, and I walked into the room. I had a conversation with my current wife, just checking up on her since I was on the road. And when I walked into the room, Dylan just kind of grabbed my attention, was trying to be quiet, but obviously was energetic, kind of, like, come here, I got to show you this, kept pulling me. And then he took me into the bathroom where we closed the door and locked it. And that's when he showed me the pictures that he had found.
Did it impact his view of the defendant moving forward?
Yes.
How so?
Dylan lost any reasons for him to look up to Mark that day.
Did you notice that in observing their relationship together from that point moving forward?
Yes.
This time, Your Honor, I'm going to approach with People's Exhibit 17, 18, 19.
All right.
Before you go through those, Mr. Redwine, did you or your brother do anything to document or make copies of those photographs you'd seen?
No.
Did you have copies of them moving forward?
No.
Take photographs of them or anything?
The only pictures I took were of these on the computer. So
Okay. And let me just say, rightfully so. In a little video that I made, I, kind of laid out this scenario of these two young boys being in the hotel room with their dad and coming across these pictures and how, I mean, imagine how that would have felt. I know how I felt seeing these photos. That I don't know Mark from anybody. He has no relation to me. He's not, in anyone I would have any respect for or look up for or anything. He's null and void in my life. And I was like, what? Huh? Dress like a woman. I don't care. Put on lingerie. I don't care. Wear diapers and poop in them. I don't care. The second that you put it up to your face and was licking on it and eating it, there's something wrong with you. And I kind of really feel that way. I understand that can be kinks. Gail, you had asked me prior, had I looked into it, and I did. And some of the stuff that it said basically is yeah, you have a problem. Feces can kill you, right? There is bacteria and nasty stuff, nasty shit into shit that will hurt you. And it's just, I think, naturally something that we shy away from, I understand that people have, illnesses and stuff, and they have to deal with feces on a regular basis. And I can guarantee you putting it up to their mouth is not something that anybody even thinks about doing. And so, yes, mental health, OCD, schizophrenic, there is a lot of different things that it says. And the OCD is not what the world in 2023 thinks of OCD. Is you clean and you have to be clean. No, obsessive compulsive disorder. You're obsessively compulsed to eat the shit. Gross. I can't imagine. And can you also just put yourself there, right? Face reality for just a second. You're in the bathroom showing your older brother how are you quiet? How are you containing yourself and trying not to wake up your dad? And oh, I can't imagine. And then to find out he held this secret for a year. Cory just said this happened in 2011. They got into arguments, Mark and Dylan, before, where Mark was going on and on and on about Cory and Elaine and telling Dylan that they're a bad influence on him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And at one point, Dylan, he messages Cory. He's like, yo, send me the poop pics of dad. Yep, let me go on ahead and send those to me so I can tell him who's the bad influence, because it's not you guys, it's this shit-eating father of ours. And Cory, like a great big brother, says, I deleted those photos. We're about to see him in court. I think they maybe show one, and don't let me forget. I'll show you them again, but hold on to your lunch.
I grabbed my camera and took a picture of them on the laptop. That's all I've done, or the only thing I did.
And by that, do you mean photographs with your phone, as a camera?
Yes.
And have you seen People's Exhibit 17, 18, 19, and 20 before?
Yes.
Are those same photographs that you saw on the computer and took photographs of when Dylan found them on his defendant's computer?
Yes.
You move to admit People's Exhibit 17, 18, 19, and 20 into evidence at this time?
Same objections as before, Mr. Moran? Yes. Okay. They will be admitted.
May I publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
We'll start with People's Exhibit 17. Do you recognize the person in that photograph?
Yes, I do.
Who is it?
That is Mark Dylan Redwine.
Do you recognize the person in that photograph?
Yes, I do.
That's the defendant?
Yes.
Do you recognize the person in that photograph?
Yes.
Who is it?
Dylan Redwine.
And then is that another of those same photos that you had observed and your brother had observed as?
Okay, hang on. I don't know that we're going to get to see them as good as I want to. So just a moment, and I am going to pull those up real quick. Hang on. Are you ready? There's one. And there's another one. Oh my gosh. And there you go. Okay. Okay, that's enough. I had to get them off my screen so that I don't get in trouble. Don't say I didn't warn you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I want to fast forward ahead. You've already talked about how there weren't a whole lot of visits between Dylan and the defendant, but was there a Boston trip in August of 2012?
Yes.
And who was going on that trip?
That was Dylan and Mark.
And at this point in time, were you getting along with the defendant any longer?
No.
And this point in time, I just want to put it down as sort of a landmark in the timeline, but had everyone already moved out of the Windmill home at this time?
Yes.
And were there discussions about custody, things like that, ongoing at this time?
Yes.
But at this time, was it still a joint custody technically, even if not in practice?
Yes.
So what did you know about the trip that Dylan was going to do in August of 2012?
I know that the previous trip, we had had some fun, and Mark wanted to do that again with Dylan. From where I was in my communications with Dylan, it didn't sound like it went the same. There was a lot of times that Dylan had reached out to me, just for various reasons, but none of which were, for just to say hi. He was pretty upset about something every time he reached out to me.
Upset with whom?
With Mark.
And are you talking about on the trip or leading up to the trip?
On the trip.
Okay. Was there tension? Was tension higher within the relationship between the defendant and you, and the defendant and Elaine Hall at this time as well?
Yes.
Did that have an impact on Dylan?
No. Me and both my mother and I tried to just worry about our relationships with Dylan and not his relationship with anybody else. And we just tried to control what we control and just be the best people that we could for Dylan whenever he needed us.
Were there times that Dylan was upset with the way the defendant talked about you or your mother?
Yes.
Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I know he, or Mark, was, or had voiced his opinion to Dylan on what we were, and clearly Dylan never shared the same opinion. So he got frustrated when, two people that Dylan loved and cared about were not being represented correctly in Dylan's eyes.
Now, did you receive a phone call at one point while Dylan was on the baseball trip when he was particularly upset?
Yeah.
Can you explain that to the jury?
Yeah. He called me on the trip, and I was in a movie at the time, so I wasn't able to respond directly. So he called me a few times. And then by I want to say the third or fourth call, I knew that something was going on. So I had left the movie and then walked out, checked my phone, and seeing that Dylan had called and texted me about asking for the pictures previously shown.
When you walked out of the movie, were there already texts waiting on your phone?
Yeah, there was, I want to say, probably 3 to 4 texts at that time with 5 or 6 missed calls.
And what was Dylan asking, if anything?
He was asking for me to send him those pictures.
Your Honor, at this time I'm going to approach this People's Exhibit 482.
All right.
Mr. Redwine, I've handed you to mark People's Exhibit 482. Can you take a look at it, please, and review it? It's a 3-page document. Do you recognize those text messages?
Yes.
Do you recognize the content in those text messages?
Yes.
Do you recognize the numbers involved in those text messages?
Yes.
And then do you recognize the date of August 4th and August 5th as consistent with the text messages you previously described to the jury?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I'd move to admit People's Exhibit 482 into evidence.
Mr. Moran?
No objection.
It's admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I publish?
Yes.
So, Mr. Redwine, the screen itself can have small print, so I'm going to ask you to assist the jury here. This is the same exhibit that's in front of you, People's Exhibit 482. Do you recognize who the numbers are and who's in the exhibit?
And again, I'm going to get complaints if you're not on the microphone, okay?
The blue is Dylan Redwine and the green is me.
So the text chain starts on August 4th. Are there some texts at the beginning where you're just reaching out to your brother a little earlier on?
Yeah, I frequently just like to check in on him and see how he was doing.
Okay, really quick. I totally agree, Gail. I really wish that they would have hammered home the significance of these photos. And pardon me, Sophie's in the back. Hang on. If you're new here, I inherited my grandmother's Chihuahua, and she has issues. Okay, she suffers from a collapsed trachea at times, and so this has been one of those times over the last couple of days. So if you hear that in the back, she's okay. I promise, she's all right. Just sorry. I wish they would have hammered home to the judge and been like, look, Your Honor, let me show you these photos. Let me show you why I don't want to go be with my dad any longer, why I don't want to be around him. But I'm concerned that sadly, Mark's rights would have trumped that, for one, as an adult, and then for two, just like they just said, they put a stipulation out right before they showed those photos to the jury that this is only to be used in determining the relationship between Dylan and Mark, that it was not to for them to look at as how Mark lived his life, how Mark how his moral compass was. His moral compass was he ate shit, okay? And enjoyed it and took freaking pictures of it. And that is significant because people don't do that, or you shouldn't do that. If y'all do that, stop. But that's the stuff that gets so frustrating to me, because let the jury know, why are we sitting here trying to put this facade up of who this person is? No, show them who they really was. And Elaine, she spoke in one of those I think it was when she was on the stand, and she said, yes, she was aware of those photos, but they do not go into detail on that. So I don't know if the boy, my boys would have came home and told me, I believe. I really feel like they would have. And I feel like as close as they were, I mean, maybe not, maybe the two boys had a kind of a pact together, like, let's keep this to ourselves and, pull it out of our pocket when we need it. I don't know, but she did say she was aware of them, but she doesn't say when she became aware of them and to what extent. Did she see them? Did she just know that they were? Because if you think about it, like if someone came to you and was like, "Hey, I saw pictures of so and so eating shit out of a diaper," you would kind of be like, "Yeah, I bet you did." Pics or didn't happen type of thing. So. But I really think that, Mark's getting way too many rights at this point because Dylan's dead and he no longer, gets to live again. And you were embarrassed, Mark, and that's why you did it. And it's sad. It's really, really, really sad.
And does this depict you asking him if he wanted to go to see a movie with you?
Yes.
What does he respond on on this blue box to the left at 17:56 hours?
That he is going to Boston.
Is that consistent with your recollection of the text messages about the baseball trip itself?
Yes.
And then did you respond?
Yes.
What did you say?
I just indicated, that's awesome. I told him, that I missed him, and me and him like to get each other hats. So I asked for a hat.
Now, the next text message from your brother, I'm going to ask you to read verbatim, Mr. Redwine, so that the jury hears what's on the exhibit if they can't see it from where they're sitting. What's the next text message at 18:01 hours to you from Dylan?
Hey, you should go to the old house and get the liquor bottles out of the trash, because Papa has pick, and I'll delete those before I leave.
What is that text message about?
That is, Mark and Dylan had been talking about some beer bottles that were left that Mark said that were mine. And so he was just trying to reach out to me and let me know, what I should be expecting, I guess.
So is it fair to say, was this a point of contention between you and the defendant at the time?
Yes.
And is your brother giving you a heads up here?
Yes.
Then moving down to 18:03 hours, do you respond to Dylan?
Yes.
What do you say to Dylan?
I said, and if you need anything, I'm always here for you, and I can't, it's all locked up, but it's okay. I got pics too, so whatever.
And then what does Dylan respond to you after that?
He says it's in the trash.
And then after that, there's a gap in time. Am I correct about that?
Yes.
You can see 18:04 hours, and then it moves on to 10:35. 22:35 hours on the same day, correct?
Yes.
So that would be roughly 4 hours later?
Yes.
And 4 hours later, what does Dylan text to you?
He said, hey, send me those poop pics of Papa, because he gave me a speech about you guys being a bad example, and I want to show him what he really is.
Now, did you learn from your phone calls with Dylan and conversations with Dylan what was going on around this point in time between Dylan and the defendant?
Briefly, I don't recall, any specifics between Dylan or Mark, but I do remember just the discussion I had with Dylan.
Was there an argument?
Yes.
And was he upset with the defendant?
Yes.
Your Honor, if I may, the witness has answered he doesn't know.
He said he didn't know, I can't remember exact words, but he said he didn't know this much, and so I think it's okay.
There was an argument with the defendant?
Yes.
He was upset about that?
Yes.
Objection, move to strike. I'm it's leading. It's
well, I'm not going to
answered.
So did Dylan explain to you why he was asking you for the pictures?
Yes.
Why?
Because he had wanted to show Mark what he had discovered himself.
Objection. If I may, I think he's just struggling to answer the same question differently. Ask and answer.
I don't think so. I think it's a little different. So if you want to ask the question again, and then you can answer.
Mr. Redwine, why was Dylan upset now?
Because him and Mark had an altercation.
And then is some of that in this text message itself, in the content?
Yes.
And it talks about the speech about you.
The defense is like, okay, shut up. That's enough. I don't want to hear no more talking about this.
You guys being a bad example.
Yes.
You talked earlier about how Dylan responded if Mark was badly about it.
Yes.
Is that what's going on here?
Yeah.
What was his next text message to you shortly thereafter?
He was asking me if I had gotten them yet.
What exactly did the text say at 23:03?
He said, "You got them," or "Hey," or "You got them yet?" And then he sent a duplicate moment, or roughly, 12 minutes later.
So he sent "You got him yet" at 23:03?
Yes.
Did he send it again?
Yes.
When did he send it again?
At 23:15.
Then did he send again the request of you at 23:19?
Yeah, he sent me the request to go. Or sent him the pictures to show Mark like he really is.
So moving forward from 23:19, how many times did he resend the message to try to get you to send in these pictures? I'll scroll down if it's helpful.
Yes. Your Honor, if I may, that last message is specifically, and this testimony goes to the forbidden inference, who you really are, and the like is more prejudicial than probative, specifically prohibited by 404B and Your Honor's instructions. I think that this is a good time to have the court give the instruction again, and
I'll give the instruction again. I don't think this is prohibited. This does show the deteriorating relationship, and it also goes to motive, like everybody talked about. But all this evidence about these photographs and Dylan wanting to show them to Mr. Redwine is being admitted for a limited purpose. This evidence is not being admitted to prove the defendant has a bad moral character, and the jury cannot use this evidence for that purpose. The photographs are being admitted to allow the prosecution to attempt to prove, well, this part of it is not for that. The photographs now are being admitted at this time to allow the prosecution to attempt to explain the deteriorating relationship the defendant had with Dylan, and it can be used by the jury for that purpose and no other.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I continue?
Yes.
So, Mr. Redwine, how many times, I'll scroll up and scroll down, how many times did your brother ask you for those pictures that evening while he was on the trip in a row after that?
I believe 7. I believe there's one more at the way top.
He asked you over and over. As you scroll down, did you in fact send the pictures to your brother?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I just wanted to see how the day was going to go and follow up with him the previous day and just see if their relationship was okay or what steps I needed to take.
So the next day you followed up with him?
Yes.
Did you have concerns about if they were in an argument sending those photographs to Dylan in that context?
Yes.
Why?
I was just worried about where Dylan was, and I didn't want any more confrontation with Dylan being as upset as he was in sending those messages. I didn't really want to send something more to fuel a bigger fire.
So as he was asking, did you ever send the pictures to Dylan on that occasion?
No.
And then moving on to the next text messages, what did you tell him at 23:38 hours?
I told him that my email had gotten wiped out.
And then did you speak with him after that the next day?
Yes.
And can you just read those texts to the jury, starting with Dylan's first one the next day at 12:16?
Yeah, he said, "What's up? And then I replied, I just wanted to see how you were doing. And then he responded, I'm fine. And then I followed up and asked, okay, just checking, what are you doing today? And he said, going to Pittsburgh.
So is it your impression that after you didn't send the photograph?
I want to pause for just a moment and say that the fact that Cory diffused that situation right then and there by stating that he, his email had gotten wiped clean and that he no longer had the photos, and the fact that he kept the photos. Had Cory not kept the photos, where would the motive be? Right? Like, I really feel like those photos were detrimental in getting the conviction against Mark. Yes, there was blood there. Yes, his bones and his small remains were found, up Middle Mountain Road behind Mark's home. But, Mark was able to talk with the mail woman and get her to say that she had seen Dylan and a friend walking. He had his alibi of going to do his payroll and meet with his lawyer. And I really feel like had we not have those photos, it would have been a little harder to prove, what had happened. Good job, Cory. You literally, you nailed this one. You did this for your brother, and I'm very proud of you.
That argument had ended and the trip moved on the next day.
Yeah, and when Dylan responded going to Pittsburgh, I had assumed that everything was okay and Dylan was fine.
Now, have you seen a portion of an interview where the defendant was asked about those pictures themselves?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this point in time, I'm going to ask you to approach the People's Exhibit 21.
Well, I want to ask you how much longer you're going to be. It is 5 o'clock. I don't know if this is a good spot to stop. I don't know how much more you got.
Given that you gave the instruction, I think I can finish the portion that involves the instruction in less than 10 minutes.
All right, let's do that.
Approach to 21?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Redwine, People's Exhibit 21.
Yes.
How do you know that?
I signed and dated it. Yes.
What's on that disc?
This is a clip from the Dr. Phil show where me and Mark discussed the pictures.
Okay. And is he talking about the pictures themselves in a interview clip basically on that disc?
Yeah.
Is that a fair and accurate clip of the interview clip involving the defendant's explanation for those photographs?
Yes.
Can I see the parties up here?
Yes, Your Honor.
Judge wants to clarify a few things, I think.
Your Honor, with that discussion, that
Hold on. With that discussion, we're going to take a break for the day. There's something that we need to do outside your presence. Please remember my admonitions, which I have here somewhere. Do not discuss this case either amongst yourself or with anyone else during the course of the trial. Do not initiate, post, or respond to anything about this case on social media. In fairness to the parties of this lawsuit, you should keep an open mind throughout the trial and reach your decision only during your final deliberations. Do not permit any third person to discuss this case in your presence. If anyone attempts to do so, please report that to me. During the course of the trial, don't talk with any witnesses, the defendant, or lawyers in the case. Don't attempt to gather any information on your own. Do not engage in any outside research.
Okay. Hold tight. Go grab a drink, grab you a snack, do something. Take the dogs out, whatever you need to do. And I'm going to set up for the next one in just a moment.
From your brother after that?
No.
Did you have a conversation with him where you saw him in person before he left?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury, where was that conversation?
It was in his bedroom at my mother's house.
Can you explain that conversation prior to his trip to the jury, please?
Yes. We had just gotten back from a concert that for my birthday, and I dropped my mom off, and I went and talked to my brother while I was at my mom's house, and I knew he was getting ready to leave that day, so I went and gave him a hug and just kind of talked to him about his trip, if he was going to see his friends.
In 2011, and then we talked about that baseball trip in 2011 after the renovation of the house. You recall that?
Yes.
And that was sort of the point in time where Dylan Redwine found the pictures, correct?
Yes.
And then from there, I think you had testified that there were very few visits from Dylan to that house between then and the baseball trip of 2012.
Yes.
Then coming up to the baseball trip of 2012, that's where Dylan had asked you for the pictures and the text messages you covered.
Correct.
And then we referenced a video clip from a Dr. Phil show. Was that video clip much later in time?
No. Sorry.
Let me ask a better question. So we had stopped our timeline in 2012, August 4th and 5th on the text messages, right?
Yes.
That was a point in time when Dylan was still alive.
Yes.
And then moving forward to the clip that you reviewed and signed, is this from after Dylan's disappearance?
Yes.
This was an appearance on the Dr. Phil show that you were present for?
Yes.
And you observed the defendant just talking about the pictures and referencing the pictures?
Yes.
And at this time, was Dylan still missing?
Yes.
May I approach you on it?
Yes.
Mr. Redwine, I marked this table 21. I showed it to you yesterday, and you talked about how there was a date on there. Is that still correct?
Yes.
Same day?
Yes.
Is that fair and accurate? What instructions Dr. Phil
Yes, it is.
Going into evidence?
Any objection other than what's been objected to before?
Defense incorporates previous objections. Thank you.
Thank you. It'll be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. May we publish?
Yes, but before you do, I need to read you another limiting instruction. The evidence you are about to see is being admitted for a limited purpose. The evidence is not being admitted to prove the defendant had a bad moral character, and the jury cannot use this evidence for that purpose. This evidence is being admitted to allow the prosecution to attempt to prove. Sorry, I should have thought about this before I read it. I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, we'll publish the exhibit.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, they are not.
So that's what you and the public
I'm not arguing that.
We're going to back that to the start of the clip at this time.
Opposed, judgment.
No, they are not.
So that's not you in the photo?
Well, I'm not arguing that it's my face in the photo. What I'm arguing is the fact that they were fabricated because it was actually, I believe that Elaine and Cory were coming into my house, running through going through my personal lawn when I traveled out of town. Because I have a keyless entry system on there. Cory knew how to get into that. I found all kinds of things missing. And I came up with a scheme that had to be so outrageous that they could not talk about it. And that's exactly what I got out of that. Did I ever intend to be sitting here on your show having this conversation with you or them? Absolutely not.
They're saying they broke into the house and fabricated the picture.
I fabricated the picture, left them available.
So, Mr. Redwine, this was 2011 on the baseball trip when Dylan found the pictures, correct?
Yes.
Were you still getting along with the defendant back then?
Yes.
And he even let you talked about staying at his house. Was some of that after you had found the pictures that you stayed at his house?
Yes.
So was there any reason back then for him to plant photos like that for you or for Dylan?
No.
And the timing of this is when people are asking the defendant questions, trying to get answers when Dylan. So, Mr. Redwine, this was 2011 on the baseball.
Real quick, guys. I showed y'all those pictures. Show me how somebody can fabricate that. Bro, you had it all over you. Like, all over. All over. How dare you? How dare you? You're a POS, Mark. I'm so glad you're behind bars. I really am.
I want to move ahead. So we talked about August 4th and 5th and those text messages in that baseball trip. Moving ahead, was there also a Labor Day trip where Dylan went to see his father?
Yes.
And then shortly after that, in September of 2012, was there a custody hearing?
Yes.
Can you just describe for the jury how the relationship between Dylan and the defendant had changed prior to that custody hearing?
Between the trip from that point to the custody hearing, there was only a few trips that they had spent together, and Mark never exercised his visitation rights to see Dylan, so that really upset Dylan. And in that time frame, Dylan's relationship with Mark had suffered because of that.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. We are so far afield from the limited purpose for which this type of evidence was requested to be admitted and what sort of 404B evidence would be permissible. What we're doing here is just embarking further down this forbidden inference path. We object. This is a problem. We ask that testimony be stricken. The purpose of this, I think, is obvious, and it's to characterize Mr. Redwine as, well, I don't want to make any further record, unless it's at the bench.
You don't need to, because I'm going to deny the motion. This evidence is not being offered to show Mr. Redwine's a bad person. We talked about this before. And that he acted in conformance with bad character. That's not why it's being offered. It's being offered to show the relationship between Dylan and his father, and to help to explain, hopefully from the prosecution's point of view, what occurred.
Thank you,
and
Your
why
Honor.
it occurred.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Redwine, let me get back on that new topic we're talking about, okay? Setting aside, we've...
Let me just say, could you imagine being Mark? Bro, if you was embarrassed that your son found these photos, you went on Dr. Phil talking about these photos, and now you're sitting here in this courtroom with all these eyes looking at you like, ugh. My question is, Mark, did it turn you on to see those photos sitting there in court? Did you like that? Is that how you get off? Because, oh, anyway, defense is very much relevant. It really is.
We've all heard and saw. We're setting that aside. We're talking about the custody hearing now, right?
Yes,
Where did Dylan want to live?
with my mother.
Was he clear about that?
Yes.
What did the judge grant in terms of who got custody of Dylan?
It's actually hearsay.
Your Honor, this isn't based on what someone told him. He's well aware of where his brother was living.
That question would be fine, but that's not how it was asked.
I can ask it differently, Judge. After the custody hearing ended, who got custody?
My mom.
Okay.
Same objection. The response that where the child lived.
Custody is a little bit different than where they lived. So if you want to ask it differently.
After the custody hearing, where did Dylan live?
With my mother.
After the custody hearing, was there also a Thanksgiving visit planned?
Yes.
Between the custody hearing and September 21st of 2012 and the Thanksgiving trip that was ordered by the court, was there a change in the communication between Dylan and his father that you were aware of being around the house?
Objection foundation.
Either aware or he isn't, Your Honor.
You asked if he was aware of it. I don't think there's a foundation yet. He can explain why he was aware. That's an issue. Go ahead.
Had you talked about Dylan, let me ask this. Had you talked to Dylan about his relationship with his father at this juncture?
Yes.
Had you talked to Dylan about whether he wanted to go see his father?
Yes.
Had you talked to Dylan about whether he wanted to talk to his father?
Yes.
What was your understanding of communication based on those conversations with Dylan, the communication between Dylan and the defendant?
He did not want to communicate.
And was there discussions in your house that you heard with regard to whether he was communicating enough with the defendant?
Sorry, can you ask the question again?
Yes. Do you ever hear your mother tell him that he should call his father, for example?
Yes.
And how did Dylan respond to the request to communicate with his father?
Dylan always said he can call me too.
So the Thanksgiving trip, I want to talk about this. Let me skip ahead to November of 2012. What was the last communication that you ever received from your brother electronically?
It was a happy birthday text that he had sent me.
What day is your birthday?
November 14th.
Do you ever get any other phone calls or emails or text messages or anything from your brother after that?
No.
Did you have a conversation with him where you saw him in person before he left?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury, where was that conversation?
It was in his bedroom at my mother's house.
Can you explain that conversation prior to his trip to the jury, please?
Yes. We had just gotten back from a concert that for my birthday, and I had dropped my mom off, and I went and talked to my brother while I was at my mom's house, and I knew he was getting ready to leave that day, so I went and gave him a hug and just kind of talked to him about his trip, if he was going to see his friends, and just kind of seeing how he was feeling about it.
How was he feeling about it?
He was pretty anxious. He didn't really want to go, and so I kind of, joked with him a little bit about, him leaving.
How did you joke with him?
I knew he wasn't very enthused to go, so I just made the comment, don't have too much fun. And he kind of, rolled his eyes at me.
Were you teasing him basically about going?
Yes.
What about whether his bag was packed or not? Did you note something about that as you had the conversation?
I don't recall.
Was he prepared to go?
Yes.
Did you talk to him about whether he was eager to see his friend?
Yes.
Was he?
Yes.
Did you talk to him about whether he wanted to see his father or not?
Briefly, he kind of just indicated to me that he wasn't, that's the part of the trip he wasn't excited for.
And then I want to ask you a separate question. In having that interaction with him in his room, did you see any injuries on him, any lip sores or any cuts or anything like that before he left?
No.
Mr. Redwine, how did you hear that your brother was missing?
My mother called me while I was at work and said that Dylan is missing. We can't find him, and that's how she told me.
What was your reaction to that?
At first, I didn't really believe her. It kind of had to sink in for a few minutes. I thought, maybe something else is up, but then she seemed pretty adamant about it. So then once she kind of showed her worry, then I started to worry as well.
As time passed, did you become even more concerned?
Yes.
Did you try to communicate with him?
Yes.
How did you do that?
I sent him several text messages and called him countless times on the drive down.
Did he ever answer you back?
No.
And so what did you do that evening?
We got into town and we spoke with the marshal's office.
Let me back you up for a second. You said you were at work. Where were you at work when you heard?
I was at my office, which is in Colorado Springs. I was just getting ready to end the day. So my mom called me about 4 o'clock, and I usually leave by 4:30. So she called me. I asked my boss if I could take the next few days off due to my brother. So I left work and just packed an overnight bag. My mom was there waiting for me. So I got my overnight bag, and we just left straight from my apartment down to Durango.
Okay. And you drove?
I was passenger. My stepdad, Mike, was driving.
Mike Hall?
Yes.
And who else went with you in the car?
My mother.
When you arrived, where did you go?
To the Bayfield marshal's office.
Was the defendant at the Bayfield's marshal's office at that time?
No.
What did you do when you arrived at the Bayfield marshal's office?
We spoke with the marshal, and he gave us just a brief rundown of kind of what was going on, what their plans were, and kind of, seeing how we could find a plan to find Dylan.
By the time that you got to Bayfield, were you concerned?
Yes.
Was that at night?
Yes.
Do you remember, I don't need a time, but roughly, was that late?
Yeah, it was, anywhere between 10 and 11 pulling in.
What was that night like for you with your brother missing?
Not a good feeling. I just have no clue, and the only thing you want to do is find him. So that's kind of what our focus was. We just wanted to come down and do anything we could to find him. So we just stayed strong as a family, and that was our task.
Were you receiving updates at the time that you arrived and then throughout the night?
Yes. When we spoke with the sheriff the night we arrived, they said meet with us first thing in the morning, and we'll kind of let you know what our plan is. So after we arrived, first thing in the morning we did was start going back to where we left off that night.
And where did you stay? Do you recall?
We stayed at a friend's house, Amber Harrison. We stayed at her house.
Was she also your mother's attorney in the divorce and custody case?
Yes.
And was she also, as well, a family friend?
Yes.
So she allowed you all to stay there because you were there to look for Dylan?
Yes.
Did you get a lot of sleep that night?
No.
So after you woke up that morning, did you stay local for a while in case anything was found?
Yeah, we headed to the sheriff's office and just was kind of seeing what the sheriff's office wanted us to do, what they needed from us. So we were just trying to cooperate any way we could.
Provide information to law enforcement, things like that?
Yes.
Were you interviewed?
Yes.
How about the search efforts? Were there search efforts ongoing while you were there?
Yes, they search and rescue had a team that was searching the lake while we were down, just answering questions and just kind of going over the timeline and everything like that.
Why the lake, if you know?
That's where Dylan was last seen, so that's where we decided to start.
You mean like the area on the map that you had showed the jury?
Yes.
The lake's right up there by your father's house?
Yes.
So in those first few weeks, what was the focus like?
The focus was, just anything that we could do to contribute to find Dylan. So, there's a lot of, anything that answering questions or being on searches, whatever we could do to help, find Dylan is what we were doing.
Were you able to locate anyone that had heard from Dylan after that night?
I wasn't, no.
And then Are you aware that anyone ever saw or heard from Dylan after the night of the 18th?
No.
And then what was the defendant's involvement like early on as you were down in the Bayfield area and people were looking for Dylan?
Well, when we arrived into Bayfield, there was no communication from Mark to us. I had reached out to Mark, just kind of wanting to get a basis on what he was feeling, where he might think Dylan was at, but just the lack of involvement, kind of triggered me to, just kind of, I was just trying to find my brother, so I was, going to where he was last seen.
So were you out in some of the search efforts, for example?
Yes.
How about the defendant? Was he out on search efforts?
He was briefly out on a few. There was a few big searches that I had seen him on, but nothing. There was only like one search I saw him on, and I invited him to come search with me, and got no reply. So I just assumed, he was in his house.
So let's talk about that. You said there were multiple search efforts, and you said there was one search effort that you saw him out on.
Yes.
Was that early on?
Yes. It was on Florida Road. It was a community search. So there was, the entire community showed up and had buses and stuff. And it was an important day for this community, and, trying to find, Dylan.
Was that also, am I saying it right? Florida
Yeah, Florida Road.
Is Florida Road also by Lemon Reservoir? Is that the same search?
Yeah, it's headed up to Lemon and Bayfield, so it's an alternative route to get up to both of the lakes.
Okay. Is it anywhere near Middle Mountain Road at all?
No.
Entirely, is it down away from the Bayfield Reservoir?
Yes, it's more on your way into town, and it's a lot of housing and stuff like that. It's, just a commute road up to the lakes.
Do you ever see him in any kind of searches near Middle Mountain Road participating?
No.
And then you talked about how you were participating but not getting a lot of communication from him, things like that. Did you start to get frustrated?
Yes.
Why?
Because I want to find Dylan, and I believe that should be his motive too. So when the lack of his efforts, were being clearly demonstrated, it really angered me.
I want to move ahead to June of 2013. So during the winter months, we had showed the map previously of Middle Mountain Road. Is it difficult to get up there in the winter?
Yes.
They close that road down?
Yes.
How's the snow up there and things like that?
It snows quite a bit up there, and it stays up there for a while just because of the terrain up there.
And speaking to investigators, was there a plan to search Middle Mountain Road more thoroughly when they were able to?
Yeah, when the weather...
I didn't hear.
Objection, hearsay.
Okay, just a second. Response?
Yes, Judge. It goes to the effect on the listener and what he's going to do and where he's going to be. Whether they do a search or not is going to be apparent through the evidence.
I think that the question can get at that without saying what were people telling you.
I think I can get there anyway. As long as it's for that limited purpose, then it's not hearsay.
Yes, Judge.
Okay, real quick. That's pretty typical. And if you recall, they did the same thing for Summer Wells up in Rogersville, Tennessee, except for it was kind of opposite, right? So here in the mountains, they needed to wait for the winter time to be over, for the snow to melt as much as it could, and for them to be able to actually access the terrain and see the wood floor, not wooden floor, but the floor of the woods of the mountains. In Tennessee, for the Summer Wells case, they had to wait until it became winter when the leaves had fallen and you could actually kind of get through there. Just wanted to throw that in there.
So, Mr. Redwine, were you informed that there were going to be some searches up on Middle Mountain Road.
Yes.
And you were living in Colorado Springs still at that time.
Yes.
So, in being informed about searches on Middle Mountain Road, was this something that you were interested in the results of?
Yes.
How come?
Because it's one step closer to finding my little brother.
Was it something that, in your perception, was important because it had yet to be done?
Yes.
So when the Middle Mountain searches were scheduled, when were they scheduled for, roughly speaking?
In the middle of summer, June, just in the nicer weather months.
Does June 22nd through June 25th sound right to you?
Yes, it does.
When those were scheduled, what did you do?
I came down, found housing arrangements, and just offered any assistance I could to the search efforts.
How far is it for you from Colorado Springs to where you stayed for the Middle Mountain searches?
It's about a 6-hour drive.
And did you have to take off work as well?
Yes, I actually ended up quitting my job for that.
Did the rest of your family come?
My stepdad did and my mother did, yes.
Did the defendant come for those searches?
No.
Was he in town at all?
Not when we started the search, no.
And was he still living up in Bayfield itself?
Yes.
So he was living roughly 8 miles away from where the search was going to occur, and he wasn't in town?
Yes.
Did that upset you?
Yes.
How did you learn that your brother, Dylan Redwine, was deceased? Was he in town at all?
Not when we started the search, no.
And that is huge. That is huge right there. That is why they were saying, look, how far away were you? He said, I'm 6 hours away. Did you have to take off work from your job? Yeah, not only did I have to take off work, I had to quit my job because I wanted to find my brother. My little brother was missing. He was last seen up here in those mountains, and I was going to go and look for him. Was Mark there? No. Mark, you lived right there. This road was right behind your home. It is such a telltale sign, guys, when these people do not go look for their loved ones, because especially, close like this, when you're a biological father. Ugh.
A few of the investigators said that they had found some bones, and then once they got the bones back and they were able to identify them as Dylan's, that's how I found out.
Were there also items of Dylan's that were located?
Yes.
Did they ever locate his backpack out there?
No.
Did they ever locate his cell phone out there?
No.
Did they locate a couple of other items that you had to review?
Yes.
Why did you have to look at them?
Because I know them.
No doubt you're thinking this will be just another one of those sleeve histories, sugared over with.
I spent a lot of time with Dylan, and I helped him a lot, and the stuff he enjoyed and clothes he bought and stuff like that.
Was the defendant anywhere around to look at any of Dylan's items?
No.
Judge, at this time, I'm going to ask you to approach with People's Exhibits 311, 314, 316, and 321.
All right, you may.
I'm going to hand you a remark from People's Exhibit 311. You recognize People's Exhibit 311?
Yes.
What is Exhibit 311?
It is Dylan's shoe, because I helped him pick them out and seen him wear them multiple times. Yes.
Mr. Moran?
No objection. Thank you.
Submitted.
Yes. It is Dylan's sock. I've seen him wear it multiple times, and I have one of the other pairs still in my house. Yes.
No objection, thank you.
Submitted. People who said that 314, what kind of condition is the sock in?
It's in pretty, I mean, it's obviously been worn quite a bit, and kind of stretched out, but, you know, still in decent condition, I guess, for how old it is.
Okay, look how emotional and how traumatizing this is. And this is, 9 years later. And I just, my heart breaks for them. I want to show you guys really quick what it is that they are looking at. Give me just a second to pull it up here. Let's see. They have the actual evidence there. We're going to look at the photos. 306 was the shoe. All right, there was his Nike Jordan shoe found out there in the woods. And if you remember, if you've been with us over the last few days watching this trial, when Elaine Hall, Dylan's mom, when she testified, she referenced that, it was snowy up there and there were no footprints of Dylan's, and Dylan's footprints would have been extremely unique or noticeable. They stood out. And this, I think, is one of the reasons why it literally had the name of the shoe right there in the sole. And so that would have been implanted, and that shoe print would have been left in the snow out there around the home, and it wasn't found. Cory also said that they're showing him the sock. I'm sorry, there's another photo of the shoe. And sorry, that's the one we just saw. There's another picture of the shoe. Now, mind you, this is 7 months after he goes missing. So 7 months, these shoes have laid in the mountains, in the snow, in the woods behind Mark's home. And, animals have picked at them. They've used them to make nests and to stay warm and, you name it. Look at that shoe. Oh. I'm glad they let Cory go through these and not Elaine. There's the sock that Cory references. You can tell it's been out there and in the elements. You can see all of the debris that's kind of stuck to it. Cory said, I recognize this sock because I still have a pair of, that came along with this at my house. I just wanted to take a moment and show you guys exactly what they were seeing. Because it is kind of hard to see on their little camera or their screen.
No.
Objection, Your Honor. The item speaks for itself. There's a lacking foundation for this witness to opine as to wild animal behavior.
You can tell whether or not there's any holes, chew marks. I think I agree with.
No.
Mr. Redwine, I'm going to show you this mark for exhibit 316. And the same people who put the 360.
Yes. It's a waistband to some underwear. Yes. Dylan's. Yes.
Mr. Moran,
No objection. Thank you.
submitted.
Yes. A set of headphones. They were Dylan's, but they were mine previously. I gave them to him. Yes. Yes.
Mr. Moran,
No objection. Thank you.
submitted. To the bailiff, but you need to continue asking questions. Okay. And the way this will work, ladies and gentlemen, these can just be passed around to you. Just when you're done, get them back to Cindy.
Your Honor, my next questions pertain to exhibits that the jury is going to view. If I could just give them a moment, would that be all right with the court? I know you said keep asking questions, but I don't want to move on to a new exhibit that I'm going to put up.
Not if they're going to view it. That's fine.
And actually, Your Honor, I do have a couple questions I can ask while they're passing it.
I've been requested to make sure you stay next to the microphone. All right? Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Redwine, I'm going to show you what's been previously admitted as
The
People's
jury
Exhibit
is currently
2.
getting a chance to look at that evidence, the headphones, etc.
Actually, Your Honor, I've been requested.
This has got to be rough.
And you know what? Let's just wait. There's too many exhibits. Okay.
Poor Cory, my heart breaks for him. I know the feeling, Gail. I definitely know the feeling. If only you guys could see how much goes on around me. The jury is taking a look at the evidence. The judge is allowing them to pass it around. It is the headphones that we found, the sock, the shoe. I believe that might be all that they're passing around right now. And the judge instructed prosecution to continue. However,
Okay, it looks like
they need the jury to look at more evidence. So we're waiting while they take a look.
I gave the jury a limiting instruction about the purpose for which evidence could be used, but I didn't tell you what the purpose was. So in terms of the Dr. Phil interview, where there was a discussion about how those photographs came into existence, those photographs were being offered to show the state of mind of the defendant regarding the existence of the photographs. That's the purpose for which it's used. It was introduced. That's the purpose for which you can use it, and that's the only purpose for which it's used.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Redwine, and I had asked you if there were any holes in the sock. Do you recall that?
Yes.
The shoe itself, does the shoe look different than the sock?
Yes.
The shoe has some holes in it.
Yes.
But the sock does not.
No.
Now, I want to bring your attention to what's been previously marked and admitted as People's Exhibit 2 will come up on the screen. Now, I showed you an underwear band that you had identified as your brother's. Can you show the jury in this picture if you can see the underwear band that you had identified from Middle Mountain?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, at this time I would move, I would ask to approach with People's Exhibit 14 and People's Exhibit 294 that have been previously provided to defense counsel, I believe.
All right.
Mr. Redwine, do you have People's Exhibit 14 in front of you?
Yes.
Is that a photograph of your brother?
Yes.
Do you recognize the T-shirt he's wearing in that photograph as from around the time of the disappearance?
Yes.
When and where did he get that T-shirt?
He got it on his road trip with Mark in 2012.
This is the one that we were referring to as the August baseball trip?
Yes.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of that T-shirt itself?
Yes.
And then is that Dylan also close in time to the disappearance?
Yes.
Move to admit People's Exhibit 14 into evidence.
Mr. Moran?
I'm going to need to look at it. I've misplaced that copy.
Okay, reapproach, Your Honor.
You may.
This time I would move to admit People's Exhibit 14 into evidence.
Mr. Moran?
No objection. Thank you.
It's admitted.
May I publish to the jury, Your Honor?
You may.
So, Mr. Redwine, is that the shirt you were referring to from the baseball trip?
Yes, it is.
And so this would have been Dylan within a couple of months, sometime between early August and then November 18th when this photograph was taken?
Yes.
Thank you. I also put in front of you People's Exhibit 294. Do you recognize the T-shirt in that exhibit?
Yes.
And what's depicted there?
It's the same shirt he's wearing in that photograph, with just little shreds of where it says White Sox.
Is it from the Middle Mountain in June of 2013?
Yes.
And were you asked to identify it as your brother's T-shirt?
Yes, I was.
Is it all shredded up at the point in which it's located on Middle Mountain?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move to admit People's Exhibit 294 into evidence.
Mr. Moran?
No objection. I am not finding that in what's been provided to us. I'm familiar with the photographs, but just would request that that be provided to the judge.
You mean in what they're doing today?
Yes.
Not provided
Yes.
in terms of...
I beg your pardon, right. I'm not making a Rule 16 record
Okay,
yet.
that was my question.
Thank
I want to make that clear. All right, 294 is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes. May we publish, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Is this that same T-shirt that you were referring to?
Yes.
In these size of scraps of the T-shirt, was law enforcement, were you viewing scraps very small that day as they recovered some of Dylan's remains and belongings?
Yes.
I had asked you about if they found a backpack or a cell phone, but did they ever find a ball cap?
No.
Objection, Your Honor. Lacking foundation, and this would be hearsay.
How can he justify
In these size of scraps
Okay,
of the T-shirt.
we're going to pull up this T-shirt real quick. Hold on. We already looked at it once, but for those of you that might be new or those watching on replay, I want to show you exactly what it is that they're looking at. Bear with me just a moment. I believe he said exhibit number 349. Move myself out of the way. That T-shirt's in there, all ripped up. Let's see if there's another one they're going to show. Maybe that wasn't. Here was the earbuds. Look at that. Look at how hidden, and hats off to those searchers, man, for finding this stuff. We wouldn't be here watching this trial had they not. Dylan would still be missing. Here is a good picture of the terrain and where evidence was found. If you're watching on a smartphone, you can zoom in. I'm not sure exactly what evidence is being shown in this particular picture. This would be a hard one to find. But just to give you an idea, I mean, look, everything, a lot of that is all the same color, how everything just blends in, and how miraculous it was that they found anything, especially those teeny tiny pieces. They found a toe. A 13-year-old boy's little toe in this. Wow. Miraculous. That's the best thing I can say. All right, let's get back to it.
Ask a different question here.
Okay.
In the course of this entire investigation, were you ever shown a ball cap that was consistent with the one that Dylan had brought on the trip?
No.
In the entire course of this investigation, were you ever shown a wallet that ended up being Dylan's?
Your Honor, this is getting a little leading. Objection.
No, this isn't leading. He's got to explain what the question is, so it's okay.
In the course of this
No.
entire investigation,
In the entire course of the investigation, you were one of the people who items were brought to over and over saying, is this Dylan's or not?
Yes.
And that's, when did that start, that process?
When we started the searches, anything that was discovered, whether it was Dylan's or not, was brought to me for me to identify.
So each time from November 19th on an item was found, you had to look at it and think, is this my brother's or not?
Yes.
And did that continue on even after the Middle Mountain search?
Yes.
Were you ever shown over the course of all that time a debit card belonging to your brother?
No.
After after Dylan's remains were found, did you remain in the Bayfield area?
Yes.
What did you do while you were there?
I just assisted anyway with the investigation or went on just hikes myself. Anything I could do to clear my mind and stay productive in finding Dylan.
After the search was over, was there a vigil?
Yes.
What was that like?
It was very sad. You know, Dylan's friends and all of us had hoped for a different way of finding him. So it was very hard day for us.
Was that vigil after his remains were found?
Yes.
Was that vigil for a missing child or for a child that was found dead?
A child that was found dead.
Did the defendant eventually come back to town after the search was over?
Yes.
Did he attend that vigil?
Object to that characterization. Eventually, prosecutor is testifying now.
Happy to rephrase, Your Honor.
I think it's okay, and that kind of objection just highlights it if we're trying not to show it to the jury. So you do what you want, but go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Your Honor. After the search was over and your brother's remains were found and you've gotten through all these items, did your father, the defendant, did he then come back to town?
Yes.
Was he present at the vigil?
No.
Are you sure he didn't go to the vigil?
We had the vigil and then we had
Objection, Your Honor, that is improper impeachment if that's what the prosecutor is trying to do.
So,
Why is this impeachment?
If you ask the question, got an answer, and re-asked, I guess, to ask and answered, if Mr. Johnson believes that there's a different answer that should be provided, there's other means of demonstrating that evidence.
Mr. Johnson?
I'll just ask a different question, Your Honor.
All right.
Did your father ever go to a vigil around the time that Dylan's remains were found?
Yes.
And your father go to a vigil that was for, let me be clear, the vigil that your father went to, when was it?
It was after we had found Dylan's remains, and it was just a candlelight vigil we had at Eagle Park.
What was he doing there?
I'm not really sure what his motives were. He kind of stayed in the background. Objection, Your Honor. If this is a question about motives, that's not anything this witness can answer. This witness could answer.
I'm looking at the question, just saying. Mr. Johnson?
Judge, I have a different question. I think the response about motive, I'm not asking about motive.
All right. This witness can't testify about the motives, at least on this question, as to Mr. Redwine. So if there was an answer there, please ignore it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Redwine, was the defendant handing something out to people?
Yes.
What was he handing out?
Cards. Objection, foundation.
Did you? Go ahead. Lay the foundation.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you see the defendant handing something out?
Yes.
Thank you. What did you see him handing out?
It appeared to be like a little business card.
What was on the business card?
It was some, I didn't really look at him too much, but it had something to do with Dylan. I'm not quite sure on what it was, though.
Do you know if it was about Dylan being deceased or about Dylan missing?
Objection, leading.
Not a leading question, Your Honor.
I don't think that's a leading question.
Based on the prior response, it's suggesting the answer objection.
Okay, I'm going to allow it.
Was he handing out business cards that talked about Dylan being deceased or about Dylan being missing?
Yes, about being deceased or missing. Sorry, I can't recall 100% on what it is.
Okay, fair enough. Was there anything about what he was handing out that upset you?
Yes.
What upset you?
That
Objection relevance.
Why is this relevant?
Because he's describing the defendant's behavior at the time of the vigil.
Describing his response. Not the defendant, not Mr. Redwine's, not Mr. Mark Redwine's behavior.
The thing, and you're going to go into what upset Mr. Redwine? Is that the plan?
Your Honor, yes, I'm going to ask what he was doing. Yes.
I think that's allowed. Whether or not this Mr. Redwine is upset really doesn't matter to the jury and should not be considered by the jury for any purpose. Go ahead. Okay.
What was he doing that was upsetting you?
he was handing out cards that just had no relevance for my brother.
Let me ask you about Dylan Redwine's fishing pole. You familiar with Dylan Redwine's fishing pole?
Yes.
You know what it looks like?
Yes.
Were you asked early on in the case to look for Dylan's fishing pole?
Yes.
Why?
It was said that it had been missing, that it was possibly down by the lake.
I want to see the cards.
Fishing. So that was just one of the things we started looking for.
Did you see the investigation and the searches go towards bodies of water?
Yes.
Are the bodies of water up in that area in the same direction as Middle Mountain or the opposite direction as Middle Mountain?
They start towards the same direction if you go by the road, but Middle Mountain Road is still quite a bit away from the lake. So
let me republish, if Your Honor will allow.
Yes.
Just so that we can be specific with the jury, I'm going to approach with a pointer.
Yes.
Mr. Redwine, if you could just indicate to the jury where the searches at the lake were occurring, and then up on Middle Mountain where...
I'm like, what was on it?
And please use the microphone up there, please. Yeah, turn yourself off. There's a mute button. Push that. Or hand it to Erin. She's much better with it than me.
Your Honor, permission to get a closer look. Permission to get a closer look, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
The searches that we did for the lake, we did by the inlet over in this area, and this is the start of Middle Mountain Road. So it's in the same direction. We did searches over
these defense attorneys,
right here,
or this one, let me just say.
Along
can I get up close? Like, you ain't already looked at this.
And where we did the searches in June is right up in this area right here.
And for scale, is that a couple miles at least up that Middle Mountain Road?
Yes.
And then those areas you indicated on the lake, are those areas that at times Dylan had perhaps fished before?
Yes.
Had he ever walked alone with his fishing pole to any of those areas to fish?
No.
Was it because of the fishing pole that you were wondering about the lake yourself?
Yes.
I'm going to move to 23, please. It's been previously admitted as well. Does this show a little better the distance if you were to drive from or walk From Mr. Redwine's residence towards the reservoir and then all the way up 8.6 miles to the location where the remains. About the lake yourself. Yes.
I really am curious to know if the phone and the backpack are not in that lake. Mark was smart enough to know not to put Dylan's body there, because with that lake being right there and him trying to say that he took the fishing pole and went fishing, he directed them to go over there and look. But how many phones and stuff like that might be down in there, and they're not really looking for that. They're looking for bodies, or a body at that point. And so I feel like that was his point in stating the fishing pole, to kind of direct them over there to that lake area. And yes, I am going to feel sorry for him on cross too, because it's going to be a bunch of bull crap. And you can tell instantly with the witnesses whenever, their whole demeanor and everything changes when they start speaking with the defense. But Mark was convicted, by the way. Yes, I'm spoiling it, but he did this.
Yes.
Can you just show a little bit about where the searches were for the jury on this closer up map?
Yeah, so the searches up in June were up in this section. So you would have to walk down this road all the way over here, and then this is the start of Middle Mountain Road, and then have to walk up all of this road. There's no access on any of here to cut across from over there. There's a river that runs there, so you have to walk all the way up this road to get up to where we had the searches in June.
And is it fair to say that that river's at the base of the mountain?
Yes.
And then the mountain itself is up. That's the terrain that you're saying there's no way through.
Yes, this section right here, where it gets really dark green, is very steep and elevates quickly.
Up on the road where the searches were being done in June, any fishing spots up there?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Redwine. At this time, Your Honor, I'm going to ask you to approach the People's Exhibit 150.
All right.
I've handed you what's been marked People's Exhibit 150, Mr. Redwine. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
What is it?
It's Dylan's fishing pole.
You recognize it. What features on it do you recognize?
The pole and then the reel.
Did you search your own home for it?
Yes.
And where?
Let's look at what 150 is. Hang on.
I've handed you what's been marked People's Exhibit 150, Mr. Redwine. Do you recognize it?
Yes.
What is it?
It's Dylan's fishing pole.
You recognize it. What features on it do you recognize?
The pole and then the reel.
Did you search your own home for it?
Yes.
Nope. Let's look at what 150. We don't have a picture of 150. We do not get to see it.
Where Dylan lived with his mother for it?
Yes.
How thoroughly did you search to make sure there was no fishing pole there?
As well as I could. I searched until I was 100% certain that it was not there.
Your Honor, at this time I'm going to move to admit People's Exhibit 150 into evidence.
Mr. Moran?
No objection, thank you.
Admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Redwine, do you know where Dylan kept his fishing pole?
Yes.
Where did he keep it?
In Mark's garage.
Did he keep it in the same place all the time?
Yes.
And were you aware of that back when you were doing interviews with law enforcement, for example?
Yes.
You were able to convey that information long before this fishing pole was ever found?
Yes.
Judge, I'm not going to publish the fishing pole at this time.
I wasn't going to let you.
Being cognizant of the time, does the court prefer I leave it there or take it off?
I'll just put it on the table.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Redwine, based on living with Dylan for years and knowing him closely, did you ever know him to walk off for miles in the woods?
No.
You ever see him do anything like that?
No.
You ever see him climb that mountain that we just looked at?
No.
Objection, Your Honor. This is ground we tread yesterday. Asked and answered.
It has been, but I think it's okay. Go ahead.
And then in terms of Middle Mountain Road, had you and he ever gone and walked all the way up there?
No. Not walked.
How would you get up there if you went up there?
With an ATV.
Is there one at the defendant's home?
Yes.
Did you ever know of any instances of him hitchhiking from his father's house?
No.
In November of 2012, in that type of season, is that the kind of place where you even can hitchhike easily?
No.
Why not?
There's just not a lot of traffic up there. And most people that live up there, they just kind of stay up there through the winter, so there's very little traffic up there.
Have there been times when he needed a ride from the house?
There has been times, yes.
What did he do?
He would call someone to come pick him up.
Did you ever know him to walk to his friends' houses on foot from up there?
No.
Are they, in particular, Ryan Nava? Is he anywhere close to where Dylan could walk to?
No.
And did Dylan have other ways of getting around other than walking if he did have to leave the home?
He would call for rides, but up there, he pretty much, that's the only thing he could do is call for rides. So.
In terms of calling for rides, you talked about how cell phone service was a bit spotty, right?
Yes.
But he had his iPod?
Yeah, he had his iPod, or if he made a call up there, it would be off the landline.
Okay. And there was Wi-Fi as well?
Yes.
Knowing Dylan well, was he the type of kid that would wake up and not use a single electronic device all day long?
No.
And based on your interactions with him prior to him leaving, was he excited to see his friends?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. We're just repeating yesterday.
Yeah, I understand, but it was yesterday. I think it's okay as long as it doesn't go too far. Go ahead.
Based on the interaction with you had with him, did it make any sense? His anticipation, your meeting with him in the room before he left, make any sense that he would just stop using his devices and not go to his friend's house?
No.
Objection leading, in addition to asking the answer.
Your objection's noted and overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Appreciate it. I have no more questions at this time.
Okay. Cross.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I request that prosecution number 23 be put back up on the scene?
For sure.
Yes, please. And permission to come near the screen?
Yes.
I lost my stick. I'll point.
You're welcome to use ours.
And please talk into the microphone, Mr.
Okay, guys, I'm going to pause it there because, again, I want to kind of keep all of these longer testimonies. I want to keep all of them together because it just really helps. You know, it helps to know who's speaking, who's talking to them. So next time we will do the defense cross-examination, and then we'll go back to the recross. It's coming up on a weekend, on the holiday weekend, so we will not have a stream over Saturday or Sunday, and I'm not quite sure about Monday because it is a holiday. People do have off work, and I want you guys to spend time with your families. That's why we're here. So anyway, I appreciate you very much for being here. If you haven't already, please hit that like button. Go ahead and subscribe. That way you will know when I go live again. I'll go ahead and schedule it ahead of time. That way you can see. But this is the trial of Mark Redwine. We are on a journey to get justice for Dylan. This all took place in 2021. Mark was ultimately convicted. I already have the sentencing on my page. I believe I put it in the playlist. I'm not positive. I guess I got to check on that. But so thankful for you guys. you just really make my days being able to sit here with you guys and go through all of this and talk about these lovely children that unfortunately lost their life way too soon. Gail, you have a wonderful weekend as well, and I will see you guys on Tuesday.